Thank you. I have a Armed Services Committee meeting coming up. I want to provide a visual coda to the chair's very thoughtful introduction, and that is, why are we here? And this, I'm going to have one that'll show a little bit better, but this is 10,000 years of CO2 in the atmosphere, and it's a little hard to see because the hockey stick is so steep, but where we are is at the very top of the chart now, and you can see we've gone from an average of about 240 parts per million. Last week it was 415, and here's another one that I think puts it in even more perspective. This is 800,000 years of CO2 in the atmosphere, and what it shows is, yes, there are variations over time, but we're now, again, where the red arrow is, at a place that we haven't been for 3 million years. The last time we were at this level of carbon, the oceans were 60 feet higher, and there were jungles in Alaska. That's why there's oil there. So we're really in a very dangerous place, literally never been there before in terms of human history. So I just think it's important to, I'm a visual learner, to see, you know, where we've been for 800,000 years, where we are now, and it really makes this hearing, I think, a very important hearing, and I commend the chair and the co-chair for bringing this forward. My question is, what's our target? I think one of you mentioned, several of you have mentioned 24 metric tons and 300 metric tons. How many metric tons of carbon are released every day or every week or every year in the world? I mean, we need to know, I need to get a feel of what the target is. Doctor?
So if it's just CO2, right now we're emitting 34 billion tons of CO2 every year. To give you a sense of scale, 1 billion tons is twice the weight of all the human beings on Earth. So we're emitting 70 times the mass of humanity every year in terms of CO2. So when you add the other greenhouse gases, it's 53 gigatons of CO2 equivalent.
So that's the target. So and what this chart tells us is we could go to zero emissions tomorrow and we're still in a hell of a mess. And we've got to start talking about not only controlling emissions, which is urgent, but also pulling out what's already in the atmosphere. And is that technology at a place where it's becoming economically feasible?
Yeah, the National Academies just wrote a very substantial report on this. It looked at all of the pathways for CO2 removal, including natural pathways like forests and soils, bioenergy with CCS, including ethanol, and direct air capture and mineralization. They also looked at carbon storage as something that encourages or makes all of that possible. The short answer is, given today's technology basket, the U.S. can't get there. So we need to expand and accelerate.
Therefore, R&D.
Therefore, R&D, and on all of them. And they proposed a budget of about $900 billion a year across all of those technology pathways in multiple agencies, including the Department of Energy and the Office of Fossil Energy and USDA.
You said 900 billion.
I'm sorry, 900 million, my apologies. That was a please amend the record there. So less than $1 billion a year.
But this is one of the most significant areas of research, it seems to me, we can do. This and energy storage are the two great challenges that we have to face. My second question is, and I think you've answered this in your discussion of projects, can this be done economically? How many cents per kilowatt hour does it add to that power plant, to the cost of the power that they're producing? Is it 1 cent, 2 cents, 3 cents? I used to be in the energy business. I think in terms of cents per kilowatt hour.
So for net power, we're a bit different because carbon capture is inherent in our system, so we can't not capture it. And for us, we don't think there's going to be any premium. I mean, the thing.
So your energy can be sold competitively with a straight old garden variety natural gas plant or other.
At the same cost or lower, the thing that gives us an advantage is we don't only sell power, right? We're competing against power plants to make all their money selling power. We sell CO2.
You have, a second line of revenue.
We've got 4 revenues, yes: argon, nitrogen, CO2, and power.
Sir.
Yeah, I just want to underscore the first point. I think when we looked at this from a strategic level, we came to the same conclusion. We made, obviously, industrial capture holds tremendous promise for the world. When you think about exporting technology and how do you impact this globally, I think industrial capture can absolutely do that. But we realized to make significant impact on reduction of atmospheric greenhouse gas, direct air capture held tremendous promise. So we made an investment in carbon engineering and direct air capture technology, and we are excited about the viability of that technology. I think the other thing I wanted to point out earlier is I think this is a great example of partnership, and we view it across value chains. So you have the capture technology, you have the transportation component, which we've talked a lot about, you have the utilization, and I think where you can come together, you know, a company like ours can work with Net Power or can work with carbon engineering in a direct air capture plant, and we can find value. How do you finance it? How do you construct it? How do you put the business purpose together? And so we're very excited about what we think is coming over the coming years on both sides of that.
And Madam Chair, the only thing I would add, just, this has to be international. We have to, if we develop these technologies, they should be shared, because we can do everything in the world here, but if it doesn't happen in India and China, we're not going to deal with this problem. So I appreciate very much your being here, and hope you can continue to inform the committee on this incredibly important subject. Thank you.
Senator King, I'll allow you a little bit of extension of time if you want to ask that very prescient question about what are we doing with technology sharing. Somebody mentioned that China has one of the operating, or I don't know whether it's commercialized. It was you, Dr. Friedman. You said, here in the United States we have 8, China has 1. What are we doing on technology sharing for this? And then we'll go to
I'll defer to Assistant Secretary Winberg first.
So there are a number of efforts that the Department of Energy engaged in. One is the Clean Energy Ministerial, which is countries from all over the world. In fact, in a couple weeks, Secretary Perry will be attending that meeting up in Vancouver. There's also the Carbon Sequestration Leadership Forum. So there's a number of venues that we're working through to commercialize, to share technology, to share best practices, not only in capture, but also in the movement of CO2 and, of course, storage.
This may be the one place where we want the Chinese to steal the intellectual property.
No.
Well, I don't know that I'd go that far, sir, but
Just saying.
yeah,
Sharing.
and the Chinese are moving forward on this as well. But it takes a whole suite of technologies, and from capture technologies, reducing the cost is important. We've talked about direct air capture, very important, but it's a concentration difference. What's coming out of a coal-fired or natural gas stack, coal-fired stack is 140,000 parts per million versus 400 parts per million in the air that we breathe. So the low-hanging fruit is capturing the CO2 at the source, at the stack, if you will. But direct air capture can be utilized geographically broadly. It's expensive. We are working on a number of technologies to bring that cost down, but it is a suite of technology.
I would urge the department to work as cooperatively as possible with the international partners. This is a worldwide problem, and it deserves a worldwide concentration of effort.
Yes, sir, we are.
You may be pleased to know that the Clean Energy Ministerial is in fact an essential platform, and the DOE has shown real leadership on pulling that together. The International Energy Agency is now the organizing secretariat for the CCUS mission. And in fact, Director Birol is passionately committed to that and has raised that to make it part of that ministerial. Right. In addition to that, there is a CCUS Knowledge Center based out of Saskatchewan. They share the engineering data and geological data from the results of their project in Boundary Dam, and Petronova is party to that, as are other projects. The International Energy Agency's Greenhouse Gas Secretariat publishes exhaustively on this topic and shares results widely through a network. And there are many bilateral agreements as well between the United States and Norway, United States and Netherlands, United States and the United Kingdom, and in China and Japan. This is work that's being done. When I served in government, I learned, much to my dismay, that the U.S. didn't set policy in other countries. And as a consequence, we really have to approach any country and any opportunity as a potential partnership, and really trying to figure out how to meet them on their terms and understand where they live. India is in a very different place on this technology than the Netherlands, and we have to understand and conscious that if we want to make progress. One last word We should be engaging the international financial community on this topic. We should be meeting in Davos. We should be raising it in those kinds of platforms as well.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.